Welcome to Monday Morning Methane, where we're working to make Mondays slightly more manageable by nerding out on methane. We're doing something a little bit different today. So, for the first time, I'm bringing a guest onto the show. Dan Romito is widely regarded as an expert in all things energy. He's the managing director of consulting at Pickering Energy Partners, host of the podcast Petronoia, and author of The Radical Middle: How Fossil Fuels and Renewables Can Collaborate on the Future of Energy. Dan, it's awesome to have you on Monday Morning Methane. It's the first time having a guest.
Yeah, this is
And it's
great.
great
I
to run
feel
into you. Yeah,
I'm very honored that I'm like the maiden voyage, man. This is great.
you're,
Thank you.
you're just really good at responding to emails like right away.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I
when you
appreciate
have all
that.
the amount of flight delays that I've had over the last month, I mean, it's really the only thing you can do besides like crush beers.
Yeah, and hang out in the airport. It was
Right.
awesome running into you. Speak of that at the conference in Nashville that we attended that was focused on methane. And in fact, you were the keynote speaker there. So I'm sure the methane community here is really interested to hear a little bit more about you, what you're working on, and why methane is now on your radar.
Yeah, I mean, being obviously consulting for the oil and gas space, methane has always been a hot topic, particularly after the waste emissions charge was introduced and it was taken away. And then it's like, what is going to go on? I think the vast majority of people that we're talking to are realizing that the methane conversation is not going to go away, not necessarily because of anything regarding politics or compliance or regulations. It's not going away because whether it's explicit or implicit, the tech bros are not going to allow it to go away. As I outlined in that presentation, the tech bros will very much determine the future economic prowess of the United States, along with our global positioning for the next century. If you look at the S&P 500, for example, it shouldn't be called the S&P 500. I take issue with how S&P names their indices. It should
S&P
call
7.
the S&P 7 and then those other guys. 1.5% of the companies, obviously the Magnificent Seven in the S&P 500, they dictate or determine 55% of daily performance. They account for almost a third of the aggregated profits within the index in its entirety. If you look at the 5-year performance of the S&P 5, it's about 90%. It's like 92%. If you strip away the Magnificent Seven, that 5-year performance goes down to 70%. So in many ways, how the Magnificent Seven evolves and performs is very much going to dictate what the future performance of the US economy will do. And all the money, as everybody knows, is in generative AI. What people are coming to realize is just how emissions intensive generative AI is with the rise of the hyperscale data center. And that puts the tech bros in a real tough bind because they already have emission goals that, for all intents and purposes, they're not going to wane or revert back to. Um, and then 50% of their revenue comes from overseas, mainly Europe and parts of Southeast Asia, which already have really strict emissions mandates in place. And so if the tech bros are going to determine the future, and if the tech bros gain, or excuse me, have a lot of revenue that comes from overseas, they're going to want to know what their emissions profile is. And part of that is what is the methane exposure that we are either indirectly or directly linked to. You're beginning to see this, like Google, for example, is not necessarily just talking about CO2 emissions. They're talking about super pollutants. And clearly one of the largest, most notable super pollutants is methane. So whereas we didn't have these conversations like 3, 4 years ago, and whereas the tech bros put in their emissions goals, right before COVID, whenever it was, it's just a new ball game, given just the state and the importance of generative AI, but also just how energy intensive it is and what does that inherently do, just not only the goals that they put in place regarding emissions, um, but to how they interact with the communities that they are now entering.
Mhm. So I mean, that's really interesting. We have a number of clients, natural gas producers, who have been working on reducing their methane emissions for years.
Yeah.
And they continue to hope that a market will materialize where they'll be rewarded, they'll be financially incented frankly, to do the
Yeah.
work that they've already continue to do the work that they've already done. We haven't seen that market emerge yet. Are
Yeah.
you seeing that happen now with these tech bros, with AI, or if not, do you think it's going to happen like in the next year, the next
I
five
don't
years?
necessarily think there's like this reward that you inherently receive. I think it's going to evolve and then just the cost of doing business. The tech bros are scared to death, as they should be, as any company should be, about accusations of greenwashing. You're seeing this play out in some of the carbon markets, and carbon markets continue to evolve in a real promising manner. But if the tech bros are on the hook purely from a compliance standpoint in Europe, they're going to have to gain better data. And obviously, with the European compliance market doing what they're doing with measurement, verification, quantification, there will be pressure by the most powerful and influential voices and personalities within our economy to pressure the energy sector into just improving the data that they're reporting to their technology partners. So is there a reward? Probably not. Do I see a reward coming in place, for doing something and then like receiving the proverbial check in the mail for doing something? Like, no. I just think in the not too distant future, it just becomes the standard that we universally agreed upon that becomes the cost of doing business.
I think that's a really good perspective. And I guess the question then is, how long does it take before that's the standard, and how proactive should I be as an operator? One of my favorite
Yeah.
memories of you is when I was giving a talk at that conference, and you said, you put up your hand, it's like, I'm not trying to be a jerk face,
Yeah.
but like, why would I do something today if I can wait? So maybe I'll put the jerk face question back to you, and
Yeah. Like,
when's the right time to act?
I love being jerk face devil's advocate. That's why I just blatantly disclose it. Yeah, total jerk face. Look, I mean, there is this regulatory game of chicken taking place in the market, and frankly, both arguments are pretty sensible. It's with the macro environment in Europe, where Europe would be complete set of fools to go back to Russia with their tail between their legs and say, "Please give us more of your Russian gas." I can easily see a management team saying, well, I'm willing to wait it out purely from a cost perspective, because why would Europe get to call the shots? They have absolutely no leverage. They need us, they need our gas. And for them to come to us and say, we want you to increase the burden of regulation, like the answer is no. Like I won't do it. Like, here's our gas, take it or leave it. And frankly, you've no other option. Totally realistic. The other component, the other side of the aisle, those clients will say, this will become a thing, whether it becomes a thing next year or in 5 years. Like, let's just rip the Band-Aid off. And oh, by the way, it does provide a benefit, namely with the engagement with our investors, the transparency that we provide into the market, the inherent trust that we want to acquire with our stakeholders. So once again, I mean, I see it 50-50. 50% of our clients are going to play regulatory chicken, and the other 50% are saying, no, it makes total sense and let's just get it done now. I don't think there's necessarily a wrong approach. In terms of impetus, I do err on the side of being proactive. Like, if you acknowledge that eventually it's going to become a thing, like, just do it. But on the other token, why I think it's better to be proactive is, as friendly as the Trump administration is to oil and gas, they have not necessarily been successful in repealing everything that the Biden administration brought in. So presumably, if there's ever a change of administration, which in the United States we have that every 4 years, there's going to be a scenario where this comes in place. And oh, by the way, like, states are going to do whatever they're going to do anyway. So even if you do business in California, it doesn't necessarily matter what the federal regulation are. California mandates that data. So to me, the writing's on the wall. At some point, you just have to improve that quality of disclosure.
Yeah, it's really interesting because we live in this politically very polarized society,
Yeah.
but both poles need gas.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like you see this bifurcation in the market that's kind of starting to play out, where the buyers, whether they're the tech bros or Europe or Japan and Korea, who, and not saying that those categories or groups or countries fall on into those polls,
Right.
specifically, but that there could be this bifurcation that happens in the gas market in the U.S. I mean, there's 9,000 producers.
Yeah.
A majority of them, or a good chunk of them, could decide there's enough domestic demand from buyers who don't care
Yeah.
what the carbon intensity is of my gas. But there's also a significant market forming and presumably opportunities to get better contracts, better terms,
Yeah.
premiums, who knows? Is that how you see things
No,
continuing to play
I
out,
think
or?
that's right. I think the competitive dynamic will will be something like someone will do it and someone will brag about the inherent benefits, whatever they may be, that they received, and that, let's call it, peer pressure will materialize within the market, and everyone will sort of bite the bullet because someone will go first. Now, who that first person is, like, I don't know, but the old saying that no one wants to be first, but certainly no one wants to be third, definitely applies to this scenario. So no, I think you're spot on. I think there will be, some joker that takes the dive, right, and gets it done, and they will go to the market as a first adopter and brag about the merit of their gas and the inherent benefits that they received. And then it's, if history has taught us anything, that oil and gas in particular is very much a copycat industry. So it's just, once again, it's a function of time.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. We're getting close to the end here. Is there one thing you'd like the methane community to know? One thing you'd like them to think about before we wrap up?
No, I would just, I mean, don't analyze the world purely through the silo of methane, right? There's a lot of connective tissue from a macro perspective that has to be learned in amongst the generalists. So the better job you do of connecting the dots, that's why we went through the tech bro piece. I think the better understanding people will have, right? When you tie it back to, like, how does this have a ripple effect on a broader, more macro level, it tends to resonate with people a little bit more.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah,
If
man, this
you
was great.
have questions for Dan, please ask them in the comments. Check out Dan's podcast, Petronoia, and book. And look forward to chatting more about methane in the future. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, man, this was great. Thank you.
Take care.